And we begin tonight with early voting in Georgia and Utah now underway, joining almost 20 states that are already voting, which comes as the two candidates are leading two distinctly different campaigns. The septuagenarian candidate, Donald Trump, spent yesterday in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, hosting one of the most bizarre events in modern American political history. He showed up an hour late after his supporters had already been waiting for hours in a room that was entirely too hot. By the time he made it onto the stage for a Q&A, not with a journalist or anyone from Pennsylvania, but rather with the original canine killer, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. People were fainting. Audience members shouted that the room was too hot. And here is how Trump responded.
Personally, I enjoy this. We lose weight. You know? No, you lose weight. We could do this, lose 4 or 5 pounds. It's okay with me.
Kamala Harris is.
But some people have been waiting here for 2 days for this.
And it only got weirder from there. What followed was more than 30 minutes of Trump swaying on stage aimlessly to his favorite tunes. Noem clearly wasn't on the same page because she tried to close out the event, but Trump had other ideas.
You don't have to go so fast. You could sit and listen. We'll play a couple of songs. Go and vote. Let me hear that music, please.
Everyone, let's thank President Trump.
Nice and loud.
God bless you. Let's send President Trump back to the White House.
It's fun to stay at the YMCA. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. They have everything for your men to enjoy. You can hang out with all the boys. It's fun to stay at the YMCA.
Nobody's leaving. What's going on? There's nobody leaving. Keep going. Keep going. Should we keep going?
Yeah, okay, so that happened. A person who was attending her first Trump rally called it the weirdest church service I have ever been to. But his diehard supporters loved every boiling hot second of it. Trump was clearly angered by reports that he's lost his marbles and that the event was a sign of his rapidly declining mental acuity and cognitive, He was so rattled by the response, he stayed up late into the night when he probably should have been getting some rest, lobbing insane lies about his much younger, healthier opponent. Those lies included claims that VP Harris's seasonal allergies are a deeply serious condition that clearly impact her functioning. Okay. Trump's campaign says they aren't bothered by questions about his mental acuity and cognitive health, but the state of his campaign would suggest otherwise. His events tend to be held in safe spaces because his diehard supporters don't care what he says or does. But those who aren't in the tank for him have serious questions, which explains why he's declined a second debate, an interview with 60 Minutes, and an interview with CNBC, which he abruptly canceled this morning. The reason they try to hide Trump under a bushel is because when he is pressed on his concepts of a plan, you get incoherent ramblings that make no sense and are not grounded in reality. That was on full and disturbing display earlier today at a Chicago Economic Club event with Bloomberg News.
We actually have a great military. We don't know how to use it, but we have a great
President Trump, with great respect, I was asking about tariffs. You are running up enormous debts.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you. This is big stuff we're talking about. You can't go that quickly.
You've gone from the dollar to
So let
Macron.
me just tell you. So I said, no, I'm just telling you basic, it's called the weave. Only stupid people put old. You don't put old in, because they're there for 2 years or 3 years.
You're
so you put them in young. So I got 3.
Should Google be broken up?
I just haven't gotten over something the Justice Department did yesterday, where Virginia cleaned up its voter rolls and got rid of thousands and thousands of bad votes, and the Justice Department sued them.
The question is about Google, President Trump.
when he shows his true self, you not only discover how weirdly he is aging, but also how deeply dangerous he is in his dotage, which is why Kamala Harris shared it with her rally goers last night in a move I don't think we've ever seen at a political rally.
Listen to his words. He tells us who he is. And he tells us what he would do if he is elected president. So here tonight, I will show you one example.
The worst people are the enemies from within. The enemy from within. Those people are more dangerous, the enemy from within, than Russia and China. These people should be put in jail the way they talk about our judges and our justices. Now, if you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough.
Honestly, I wish it was just funny watching Trump glitch out to the beat. But this election is deadly serious, because what awaits us on the other side isn't fun little music concerts, but rather violent raids across the country to round up immigrants at gunpoint and herd them into internment camps. National Guard members patrolling city streets ready to snuff out peaceful protesters. Nationwide stop and frisk, and police officers with full license to kill, because Trump has promised to grant them the same total immunity the Supreme Court granted him. If you don't believe me or Trump, maybe listen to a guy who worked for him and denied one of Trump's insane requests to shoot protesters in the legs.
Do you fear that he would try to utilize the National Guard, the military, against U.S. citizens?
Yes, I do, of course, because I lived through that. And I saw over the summer of 2020 where President Trump and those around him wanted to use the National Guard in various capacities in cities such as Chicago and Portland and Seattle.
And if shooting American citizens doesn't bother you, then maybe you should pause and think about what retired General Mark Milley told journalist Bob Woodward about Trump, which is that no one has ever been as dangerous to this country as Donald Trump. He is a total fascist. He is the most dangerous person to this country, unquote. Joining me now is Ashley Etienne, former communications director for Vice President Kamala Harris, Matthew Dowd, former Republican strategist and MSNBC senior political analyst, and Paul Rieckhoff, founder and CEO of Independent Veterans of America and host of the Independent Americans podcast. Thank you all for being here. Ashley, I'm going to come to you because, you know, you have worked for Vice President Harris, but you've been in the Biden-Harris administration. Imagine for me what you think the media landscape would look like for Joe Biden had he stood on stage at what was supposed to be a town hall and glitched for 40 minutes to the tunes, to his favorite tunes. What do you think that the media would be saying about him today?
Well, we actually don't even really have to imagine much, because you remember you saw Joe Biden in that debate, and the media seized on him, like incessantly seized on this question about whether or not he was mentally prepared to handle the office of the presidency. But here's the way I see it, Joy. This is just classic Trump lunacy. He intentionally pushes the boundaries. And for me, there's something much more sinister at play here. It's not just that I think he's mental. It's not just that I think he should release his medical records, which I'm not sure that I would trust at all. But for me, it feels like he's intentionally driving this point about, making a mockery of our democracy and our institutions, making a joke of the office of the commander-in-chief to really serve the benefit of his real bosses. And I'm not talking about the American people. I mean, there's still these unanswered questions about his relationship with Vladimir Putin. There's still these questions about why he sent COVID tests to Putin. So for me, there's something much more sinister at play, why the president, the former president, is really going to these extremes to really, I think, make the point that the joke is on us as American people. I mean, it's a slap in the face to his voters, but also to the American people. The other thing I would point out, too, is is this feels like to me a base vote strategy on the part of Donald Trump. It's clear to me that he thinks he's not going to get those Nikki Haley voters, those disaffected Republicans. So what he's doing is double downing on a base vote strategy and really trying to turn out these low propensity voters that are more inclined to think that this stuff is funny and to come out and vote for him.
Well, I mean, he also apparently lied at the American Economic Club Forum, saying that he's winning the early vote, which you can't even possibly know. Matthew Dowd, I suspect the answer to Ashley's questions are the same answer as to why he glitched for 40 minutes to various tunes that, in many cases, the artists in question have told him never to play ever again because they don't want to be associated with him. It is because Donald Trump is an aging, potentially senile old man who has no impulse control, who has no command of the facts or no command of the issues, and is simply sort of acting in the moment. He's sort of a esprit de corps kind of aging man. And so his worst impulses just pour out of him. Let me give you an example of that. Here he is at the Economic Club, and he is asking about whether or not he would respect a peaceful transfer of power. Take a listen.
Will you commit now to respecting and encouraging a peaceful transfer of power?
Well, you had a peaceful transfer of power.
You had a peaceful transfer of power. You had a peaceful. Come on, President Trump. You had a peaceful transfer of power compared with Venezuela.
People were angry. People went there. And I'll tell you what, they never show that. The primary scene in Washington was hundreds of thousands, the largest group of people I've ever spoken before, and I've spoken before. And it was love and peace. And some people went to the Capitol. And a lot of strange things happened there. A lot of strange things with people being waved into the Capitol by police, with people screaming, go in, with that never got into trouble. You know, I don't want to mention names, but you know who they are. A lot of strange things happened. But you had a peaceful, very peaceful. I left the morning that I was supposed to leave. I went to Florida.